Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated Millennial Podcast. It's your host, Lauren Nicole, and today I want to talk about how two things can be true. Now, the point of today's topic is to help us have an exercise in critical thinking. All right, let's get into it, guys. Okay, so first I want to start off with us looking at the definition of nuance because it seems as though our generation has lost the ability to apply nuance. You can literally see it all over social media when someone brings up a topic or they're trying to make a point. You will have people jumping into their comments like, well, what about this? And what about this? And they'll start naming specific situations that whatever the person may be speaking about, maybe it doesn't apply 100% to this hypothetical situation that someone may bring up. And I see where it time and time again, people seem to not be able to apply nuance to whatever they are presented with. And I'm not sure if maybe it's a bit of like a contrarian type thing where, well, I just want to prove that you're not right about what you're saying. And there probably is a lot of that going around. But let's take a moment to have a little educational nugget. So, according to dictionary.com, nuance means a subtle difference or distinction in expression, meaning, response, etc. Now, Merriam-Webster's definition of nuance, it is a subtle distinction or variation. In Lauren's terms, it is the ability to look at the complexities of a situation and understand that there are multiple ways that a thing can go and something can still be true. And in basic terms, it's the ability to think critically, right? Okay, now that that's out of the way, I think that it's important to have the ability to look at issues somewhat objectively, even if you do hold an opinion that weighs maybe more on one side than another. But the ability to at least see the issue in more than one way is important. And sometimes two thoughts are actually true at the very same time. And no, this is a little different than being devil's advocate. However, sometimes, yes, you need to look at things outside of the lens of your personal worldview, your personal traumas and pains. You have to step back a little bit and say, okay, I can see it that way. I may not agree, but I do see it that way. So I suppose it would seem that I'm having multiple conversations in one, and I'm only giving you guys the stream of consciousness as it goes through my brain. But let's talk about some specific examples of two things being true. Examples of two things can be true include I can understand you and not agree with you. I can disagree with you and respect you. I can not like you and still respect you. I can love you and still need to walk away from you, right? So we can look at various situations and say, people tend to argue one side or another where there can literally be aspects of both that apply to the situation where everybody's not wrong, even though everyone's not necessarily right. Now, I'm not super religious these days. Now, for those listening who might know old Lauren, listen, times have changed, okay? But for everyone listening, just know that at the foundation of it, your girl is churched. Like old school R&B singers used to be churched, and you could hear it in their voices. Your girl is still churched. It's there. And so the Bible says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And maybe, just maybe, they was talking about me. However, I believe that I have a point when I say you can still see two sides of an issue and see that some things are true and not everything is complete BS. Okay, so a really great example is the situation that occurred was that last year where Kirk Franklin and his son were going at it, and it got on social media, and the son called himself exposing his dad because the dad was cursing him out. And so people were in a frenzy. Twitter was on fire, and of course, Facebook. Oh, the beloved Facebook. Facebook is not one of my favorite places in terms of the social media aspect of it. It's just not. It's this weird juxtaposition of generations. It's just not. However, that was where I saw some of the most stark differences in opinions, and I knew, with me being from the South, from a very religious culture, that going on Facebook and seeing people from back home and my family discussing this topic, it was going to be leaning more on the side of Kirk Franklin's defense. However, I did see where some of the younger people were saying, "Hey, we don't know everything that's going on. Like, don't think that Kirk Franklin is super innocent in this situation just because, he's your favorite gospel artist or whatever." And conversation started sparking up about parents and children and how children are supposed to engage with their parents even once they are adults. And this concept of respect was reoccurring, where folks really felt like the son was dead ass wrong because no matter what, he should have been respectful of his father. And people felt that, Kirk Franklin probably got as hype as he did because of the disrespect from his son. And that's probably true, probably the case. But nobody was making concessions for the fact that respect goes both ways. And that we also, at the end of the day, we don't know the full story of what has happened in that family between the parents and that young man. We don't know the history there. And one of the things that came up was that, your parents might be this way, but you're still obligated to, be this way towards them. And it doesn't matter this and that. And parents work hard and they provide. And for me, it became the age old, I fed you, I clothed you, I kept a roof over your head argument that I feel a lot of parents tend to use against their children as sort of like an obligatory, you owe me because I did this for you, where a lot of those children look at it like, but I didn't ask you for this. I didn't really ask to be here. It's not something that's going to sound good, but somebody's got to say it. So, I'll be the one, right? They've taken you to football games and soccer games, and, you may have lived a certain way and all of these things. The point of this example, in terms of two things can be true, is that in terms of parenting, your parents may have loved you and cared for you and done the best that they could and still have caused you harm. Two things can be true. And so in the context of Kirk Franklin, where people are looking at it like, oh, he probably did all that he could for this boy and da 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 da, without knowing the details of what has happened to damage this relationship. From my point of view, looking in, it is obvious that something or some things have occurred to damage that particular relationship. It was not all rainbows and roses. And then all of a sudden, the son is outing the dad publicly, showing the world that y'all look up to this man, but he can also be disrespectful as hell too. It didn't happen overnight. That wasn't just one instance. That's not how things work. To me, it was a window into the fact that everybody has stuff going on, even people that you may look up to or admire. And as a parent looking for whatever the issue was, saying, I've done this for you, I've been this for you, or whatever. Yes, you may have been all of those things, and that child can still be having some issues on the back end from some of the other experiences that they had with you, along with the food, clothes, and shelter you provided. You may have provided food, clothes, and shelter, and harsh criticisms, and harsh punishments, and a helicopter parent, and have been very strict, right? So you may have checked off the boxes of being the caretaker, which, by the way, are kind of like the baseline standards of being a parent. And this is not to shit on parents. So I hope that people are able to apply nuance as they're listening to me. I'm not saying, oh, you're just shitting on parents or you're shitting on your own parents. You guys, listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying, in terms of the topic of two things can be true, this is a very specific example that the world saw. If you were paying attention, maybe you missed it, of, hey, this relationship got put on Front Street for everyone to see, and people took sides in a case where there may have been truth coming from both sides. And we don't know the details specifically of them, but I'm going off of some of the responses that I saw on social media, specifically Facebook. And I was just kind of baffled by people's lack of compassion in terms of just going ham on the son and not seeing that he may have had a point, or he may have had some valid reason as to what was going on with him, with his anger or his hurt or whatever. And that's not to discount the anger, hurt, or disappointment that Kirk Franklin was experiencing. The fact that both of them were hurting showed you that both of them had truths in the situation, and it had escalated to the point that we saw, but we just came in the middle of an ongoing movie, an epic, if you will. And I don't think that their lives are much different than our personal lives, honestly. So with that said, in the vein of applying nuance to the situation, some of what people were riled up about was the simple fact that he even put this thing out for the world to see, that he even recorded this conversation with his father and put it on Front Street for the public. So with that in mind, whatever backlash he was going to get was deserved in the eyes of some people. And I don't disagree that he kind of put himself out in a way that, even if you had a valid point, that was not the way to go about it. But I don't think that discredits or lessens the point that at the end of the day, two things can be true in their relationship. Holding parents accountable earlier in the episode. However, we have to recognize that this applies to us too, where you can be very grateful for the things that your parent has done for you. No, let me turn it around a different way. You can want to hold your parents accountable for the harm that they have caused you, and be very grateful for the things that they have done for you, and acknowledge that they tried the best that they could with the information that they had, understanding that there was no manual. And also, now this is going to be a bit of a sucker punch here. Understand that you could have been a child and you could have caused harm to your parent as well. You could have been a minor underage. Yes, your frontal lobe was not fully developed. We get it. We know. And you unknowingly, unintentionally caused harm psychologically, emotionally, maybe even physically, so for some of you guys, to your parents. And that's not something we often talk about. We often very much so look at the adults in our lives like they're the responsible parties for everything that has gone on and that has happened, and they should be held accountable, which is very true. And that as children, we did cause some disruption to them, not intentionally. We have hurt our parents' feelings at times. We have embarrassed them and things of that nature that we tend to think like, oh, they're just a child or whatever. And I think for those of us millennials who now are parents are experiencing what it's like on the other side, those of us who have not yet reached parenthood can only speculate. But yeah, one thing my mom has always told me is keep on living. And I will tell you, as I have gotten older, certain things make so much more sense. And it is true. You just got to keep on living. So keep in mind that, yes, the things that you may hold your parents very much so accountable for, um, it can be true with what it has cost you in terms of your life experience, and you being on the opposite side of that in the role of parent, you may make very similar mistakes with your own child unintentionally and still cause similar damage. Again, this is simply an example of the concept, but it's something I think that many of us can actually relate to in a very real way, which is why I've kind of gone on about it. But gonna hop off of it now and moving on. So, when you look at your personal life, who do you have a rift with or a disconnect with? Have you had issues with your parents? Do you have challenges in your relationships? Is there a friendship that you have walked away from or that you're struggling with now? And really look at those situations, those circumstances, and consider that two things can be true. You're not necessarily the only one who's right in the situation, but you're not necessarily completely wrong. And that applies to the other person as well. They might not be completely wrong either. From whatever the point of view that they are experiencing this same situation with you, which, by the way, someone can be in the situation with you and experiencing it completely differently because of their life experiences that have brought them to this point with you. Literally provide a totally different interpretation for what's happening than whatever you are interpreting that situation to be. So, if you say, I can love you and I need to walk away from this situation, you have to understand that whether you're the person considering walking or that person is considering walking away from you, that doesn't mean that they don't love you. It just means that for whatever's happening in the situation that may be causing them to stress or causing you to stress, whatever in the relationship is not serving you, never served you, is no longer serving you, does not mean that love ends. It does not mean that conflict has to begin. It simply means that while this is true that I love you, I also need to make this decision for the betterment of myself. In an argument about beliefs, you can say, or it doesn't even have to be an argument. I conflict resolution is a skill that not everyone has. I understand. If you can't have certain conversations without arguing, the best thing for you to do is to cool down to the point where your emotions are not riled up at any given point, and then try to have conversations about whatever's happening. So if it comes to beliefs, if you know good and well talking about religion is really just going to grind your gears to the point where you cannot hear anyone else out, you're not going to be swayed. Trust me, I know someone like this. They will not hear you at all. There is no nuance at all. There is no considering anything else. It is this and this only. And it's very frustrating trying to talk to them to the point where I generally just don't. That relationship is very surface at this point, and it works that way for us. But for those of us who do have a sense of being able to think for ourselves, and we do have some emotional intelligence where we can navigate through other people's thoughts and other people's beliefs without feeling like we're less of ourselves, or we now have to change ourselves or our stance, or we failed because we haven't effectively convinced someone else of what they think. You can go into these conversations now with some sort of relief, I would think, that, hey, okay, not only do I not have to agree with you at all, we can still be cool after the conversation. We can still go get some ice cream. We can still be in this relationship. We can still be friends. For those that are in a workplace with people that they don't like, I know it's very, very hard to respect someone that you don't like. And in terms of like workplace situations, I would say that respect doesn't really need to go any further than being cordial and not being nasty just because you may have particular feelings about a person, right? Keeping it respectful can literally just be keeping it above, what is the phrase, like above ground or whatever. Just keep it surface, keep it pleasant, and call it a day. You're not there to be overly friendly with your coworkers anyway. So two things can be true. I really don't like you, but I don't live to make your life miserable. I don't live to make sure you know that I don't like you every day. I don't show up trying to undermine you or be passive aggressive towards you or whatever. You understand? For those of us who have attended college, I know for me and for some of my other friends, those were some real turning points in our belief systems, because we had finally gotten out of our bubbles of our family and our family friends and our churches, and we're around other cultures of people with different backgrounds. For those people that have experienced an HBCU, now that is an otherworldly experience in terms of the fact that you are going into an environment with people who on the surface all look like you, or they look similar, but they are so different from one another that now you just see people as people with race removed, and still see the differences and the multitude of culture that exist in people. And so now you can't just outright point out the differences between you and the next person. It might come out in how they live, hygiene standards. It might come out in, again, belief, religion, political thinking, that kind of thing. And it does not mean that I have to disrespect you. It doesn't mean that I have to dislike you. Do you guys have any friends where you're like, yo, like, I really rock with this person. Like, that's my dog. That's my dog. But yo, they be tripping because, they feel like this, or they believe this. But I mean, outside of that, he cool, or she's dope. She's an amazing person. I can't really get with this particular thing about her. But other than that, I mean, that's her thing. We don't even get into it, and we're cool. And so I want us as a group to be able to do this all around, to apply this concept all around. And when you go forth on social media and you see someone say something, before you lift your fingers to go, but what about? First, consider that whatever these people are saying, some of it's for shock value, for one, right? Understand that the entertainment industry is purposely doing and saying things to keep you hooked, to keep your attention on them, and to maintain relevance. So sometimes people are saying things that they themselves don't even really believe. So let's start there. But even when they are saying things that they wholeheartedly believe with their chest, another thing I need for some of us all to apply is, if it does not apply, let it fly. Please. Please. If they are not talking about you, guys, really, it's like that saying, a hit dog will holler, is true. But there are instances where, like, you're not even the hit dog. You're not even what they were aiming for. And you're over here like, you're riled up. Your blood pressure has shot up to the sky, and, you're stressed. Your anxiety is through the roof because they just can't be right for what they said, when what they said does apply to somebody. And with the way that you're responding, it would seem as though it applies to you. And if it doesn't, then why are you defending the fact that it's not you? Like, what was going on, and it still happens, but not as much, where women will be on social media and they'll say something about all men, and the men will jump in and be like, not all men. And it's like, but if they're not, if you're not one of those men, one, thank you. Two, talk to your homeboys so that they're not one of those men either. But three, if it wasn't about you, then we weren't talking about you, bro. Like, and same for women. Not all women, it's, hey, if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if you do see something relatable, if you do see something that you can kind of sort of get with, do you really need that person to specifically specify the details of that thing so that it fits you? Or can you think for yourself of how something like that might be more relatable to you under a specific context without shutting it down? Understand? Okay, I think that I've gotten my point across today. So even in this case, someone might listen to this and be like, but what about the case where, somebody commits some heinous crime and they go to court and the jury lets them off, they get off, they're not guilty, they're not proven guilty, but they actually are innocent. Are you saying that that's right? It's like, I don't understand what is up with the extreme hypotheticals that have low probability of actually, not even actually occurring, but even like, that that's not what that person was even saying. You know that. It's like, why do we have to put people in a position to where they have to defend themselves? Like, what form of entertainment or satisfaction do people get out of that? You just think for yourself. Do you really think that someone is trying to say that, well, if a murderer is proven innocent in a courtroom, then what they did was okay and they're innocent because, the justice system let them off? It's like, if you can think and you know for yourself that the justice system is a little bit off kilter, someone should not have to go through all of the mental Olympic hoops with you in order to make their point. So the challenge for today is to think for yourself, think critically, and be able to apply nuance in situations, because the fact of the matter is that oftentimes things are neither only black and only white. Sometimes there's some gray, i.e., two things can be true. Tell me what you think, guys. Join the conversation. Give me some instances of two things can be true. Give me some examples from your life or your experience, or pose a question to the community so that we can continue having this conversation. Thank you guys for tuning into the episode and riding it out with me. I hope that you all were challenged. I hope that you were entertained. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram at thefmillennial. And as Auntie Tabitha Brown says, go ahead and have a good day now. But if you can't, don't you dare